The scent of salt and pine was the first thing to greet Clara, a bracing embrace that wiped away the last lingering exhaust fumes of the highway and the faint, stale scent of her own uncertainty. Seabreeze Cove wasn't just a place. It felt like a sigh, a collective exhale of the world, a slow, deep breath, taken after too long holding it in. She felt it immediately. This quiet peace settled over her like a comforting shawl. Her little cottage, rented unseen from blurry online photos and a remarkably patient landlord, was even better than she'd hoped. Perched on a gentle rise, it overlooked the expanse of the Atlantic, its windows framing a kaleidoscope of shifting blues and grays. Inside, it was small but bright, with whitewashed walls and floors worn smooth by generations of feet. A spacious attic room, bathed in the soft, diffused light she craved, promised to be the perfect studio. Clara unpacked slowly, deliberately. Each box opened was a step forward, a tangible loosening of the ties to the life she'd left behind in the city. Her paints, her brushes, her canvases, they felt like old friends, familiar and comforting, yet now imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. She was here to paint, to find inspiration, to rediscover the vibrant colors she felt had faded from her own palette. And, perhaps, to find a quiet corner for her own heart to mend. On her second morning, after a breakfast of strong coffee and toast eaten on the small porch overlooking the sea, Clara set out to explore. The village was a charming jumble of weathered clapboard houses, brightly painted fishing boats bobbing in the harbor, and a scattering of shops that looked as if they hadn't changed in decades. A general store with a bell that jingled merrily, a tiny post office, and a cafe sending out the irresistible aroma of roasting coffee. She followed the winding cobblestone path that hugged the coastline, her camera slung over her shoulder, ready to capture the fleeting moments of beauty she knew this place held. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the distant cry of gulls and the rhythmic hush of waves against the shore. Sunlight sparkled on the water, turning it into a million dancing diamonds. The path eventually led her towards the far end of the cove, where weathered sheds huddled close to the water's edge. This was clearly the working heart of the harbor, less picturesque than the village square, but alive with a different kind of beauty, the beauty of industry and craftsmanship. The rhythmic thud of a mallet against wood drew her gaze, a deep resonant sound that spoke of strength and patience. Through an open doorway of the largest shed, she saw him. He was a study in concentration, muscles flexing under a worn canvas shirt, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he bent over the skeletal frame of a half-finished vessel. Sawdust clung to his jeans and boots, a fine golden dust that caught the sunlight filtering in. He moved with an economical grace, each swing of the mallet precise and powerful. The air around him seemed to hum with his focus, a quiet intensity that was almost palpable. Clara stopped, instinctively raising her camera, then lowering it. It felt intrusive, like capturing a secret moment. There was something undeniably compelling about him, not just his physical presence, which was considerable, but the profound connection he seemed to have with the wood, with the craft. He wasn't just building a boat. He was coaxing life from timber, shaping it to the will of the sea. She watched for a long moment, feeling a strange pull, a sense of recognition for the deep passion that drove his hands. It was the same passion, she realized, that drove her own, albeit with different tools. He didn't look up, completely absorbed in his work. Feeling a blush creep up her neck, Clara quietly moved on, her heart doing a curious little flutter she tried to ignore. She was here for peace, for art, not for whatever that unexpected jolt had been. Further along the path, beyond the boatyard, a narrow lane wound upwards towards a stone lighthouse that stood sentinel on the highest bluff. And beside it, a sight that made Clara gasp. An ancient, gnarled willow tree, its branches reaching out like countless arms, their leafy fingers almost touching the ground, creating a secluded, verdant chamber. It was magnificent, imbued with a silent, profound wisdom. As she admired it, a small, bright-eyed woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun emerged from a tiny cottage nestled near the lighthouse base, carrying a watering can. She smiled at Clara, a warm, welcoming smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Lovely, isn't she?" the woman said, gesturing to the willow. "Oldest tree in Seabreeze Cove, they say. Seen more comings and goings than anyone alive." She's breathtaking, Clara replied, feeling instantly at ease. My name's Clara. I just moved into the little cottage by the east end of the cove. Ilara, the woman offered, extending a hand that was surprisingly strong. Welcome to Seabreeze. I run the Salty Bean down by the harbor. You'll find the best coffee and gossip there. She winked. I'll have to visit, Clara promised. This tree? It feels special. Ilara nodded, her gaze softening as she looked at the willow. Oh, she is. We call her the Whispering Willow. It's an old tradition here. People come here, Clara, when their hearts are full of hope, or worry, or a dream they haven't dared to speak aloud. They whisper it to the tree, and the tree, in turn, whispers it to the sea. It's believed the sea carries those whispers, nurtures them, and helps them come true. Clara listened, captivated. The idea was enchanting, a beautiful blend of nature and human longing. Do people really do it? Still do, Ilara confirmed. Mostly at dusk, when the light is fading. It's a quiet thing, a personal thing, but it's woven into the fabric of this place. Gives people a sense of hope, you see. A belief that there's something bigger listening. Clara looked at the dense curtain of leaves, imagining countless whispers, secrets, and dreams held within its ancient embrace. A shiver, not of cold, but of wonder, traced its way down her spine. The whispers, under tradition. It clicked into place, the unspoken magic of the town now given a name. She thanked Ilara and continued her walk, the willow tree and its whispered secrets now firmly lodged in her mind. On her way back towards the village, she found herself drawn back to the boatyard, though she tried to resist. The shed seemed quieter now, the rhythmic thudding gone. Peeking in, she saw the boat builder was no longer there. A pang of something she couldn't quite name went through her. Disappointment? Curiosity? Deciding to sketch the harbor from a different angle, she found a spot on a weathered bench near the edge of the docks, overlooking the small fleet of fishing boats. She pulled out her sketchbook, the pencil a familiar extension of her hand. She started with the lines of the masts, the reflections in the water, the gentle sway of the boats. Lost in her work, she didn't notice the approach of heavy footsteps until a shadow fell. She looked up, startled. It was him. The boat builder. He stood over her, a coil of rope slung over his shoulder, his eyes, the color of dark, deep sea, regarding her with an unreadable expression. Up close he was even more imposing, taller than she'd realized, with a rugged handsomeness etched by sun and hard work. A fine sheen of sweat coated his brow, and his presence was as solid and earthy as the wood he worked with. Afternoon, he rumbled, his voice deeper than she'd expected, like stones tumbling in a slow current. Clara's cheeks warmed. Oh, hello. I hope I wasn't in your way. She gestured vaguely towards the boatyard. No, he said, his gaze dropping to her sketchbook. He paused, his eyes lingering on her drawing of the harbor. You've got a good eye for the light. His unexpected compliment surprised her. Thank you, she managed, feeling a silly flutter in her chest again. I'm Clara. I just moved here. Finn, he replied, his eyes meeting hers again, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher passing between them. He had a faint scar above his left eyebrow, giving his face a bit of a roguish edge. Boat builder. He gestured to the sheds behind him. Welcome to Seabreeze. It's beautiful here, she said, feeling a little breathless under his steady gaze. I'm a landscape artist, looking for inspiration. He nodded slowly. Plenty of that around here, changing every hour, if you know where to look. He paused, then gestured with his chin towards the far end of the cove, where the water met the rocky shore in a tumble of foam. If you want the real wildness, go beyond the point at dawn. That's when the sea truly speaks. With that, he gave her another brief, assessing look, then simply nodded and continued on his way, the rope shifting on his shoulder. Clara watched him go, a strange mix of exhilaration and embarrassment bubbling inside her. He was direct, a man in a few words, but his words had held an unexpected depth, a surprising invitation. If you want the real wildness, go beyond the point at dawn. The encounter left her feeling both intrigued and slightly off-kilter. Finn was undeniably captivating, a force of nature in his own right, rooted deeply in the land and sea of Seabreeze Cove. He was everything the city wasn't: raw, real, unvarnished. Over the next few days, Clara settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for painting in her attic studio, capturing the ethereal glow of sunrise over the ocean, the shifting moods of the sky. Afternoons were for exploring, for gathering inspiration, for sketching the character-filled corners of the village. She visited the Salty Bean, as promised, and found Clara to be a fount of local knowledge and warm conversation. She learned about the annual blessing of the fleet, the history of the lighthouse, and the close-knit nature of the community. Finn O'Connell, Clara had said, pouring Clara another steaming mug of coffee, when Clara hesitantly brought up the boat builder. He's a good man, quiet like his father and his father before him. That boatyard's been in the O'Connell family for generations, builds the sturdiest vessels you'll find on this coast. Clara smiled knowingly. Heard you ran into him. Clara felt her cheeks flush. Just briefly. He seems very dedicated to his work. He is, Clara agreed. And to this town. He's one of the pillars of Seabreeze, takes his responsibilities seriously, Finn does. The more Clara learned about Seabreeze Cove, the more she felt a sense of belonging begin to take root. The quiet pace, the genuine friendliness of its inhabitants, the sheer, untamed beauty of the landscape. It was all slowly, gently, coaxing her out of the protective shell she'd built around herself. She decided to embark on a new series of paintings, something that would capture the essence of the village, its people, its spirit. She'd call it the soul of Seabreeze Cove. It would be a way to truly see, to truly connect. One evening, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Clara found herself drawn back to the lighthouse and the whispering willow. The air was still, carrying only the distant murmur of the waves. She stood beneath the ancient branches, surrounded by the soft rustle of leaves, feeling a profound sense of peace. She thought of Clara's words, of the tradition. When their hearts are full of hope, or worry, or a dream that they haven't dared to speak aloud, what would she whisper? Her hopes for her art, for her future, for the quiet healing of her heart? She closed her eyes, letting the stillness envelop her. A sound, soft and rhythmic, reached her ears. A gentle tapping, not the heavy thud of a mallet, but something lighter, more delicate. She opened her eyes and followed the sound. It led her around the bend, past the lighthouse keeper's cottage, to a secluded stretch of beach where the waves broke gently against smooth, dark stones. And there he was again. Finally. He wasn't working on a boat this time. He was sitting on a large piece of driftwood, whittling a small piece of wood with a delicate, almost tender precision. His large, strong hands, which she'd seen wield mallets and ropes, now moved with an unexpected grace, shaping the wood into something intricate. The sunset light illuminated his profile, casting long shadows, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the intent focus in his eyes. He looked up as she approached, his hands pausing, the small carving held carefully between his fingers. There was no surprise in his gaze, just a quiet acknowledgement. "Evening," he said, his voice softer than before, almost a murmur against the sound of the waves. "Evening, Finn," Clara replied, feeling less flustered this time, a comfortable warmth spreading through her instead. She gestured to the carving. "What are you making?" He held it out to her. It was a small, perfectly formed seabird, wings swept back as if in flight, its tiny head detailed with surprising realism. Just something to pass the time, for Clara's counter probably. Clara took it, her fingers brushing his briefly. The wood was smooth and warm from his touch. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely impressed. "You have so many talents." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his lips. "Just working with my hands, like you, with your paints." He gestured to the camera slung around her neck. "Did you find that wildness I mentioned?" "Not yet at dawn," she admitted, "but I've been exploring. This place, it's captivating. I'm starting a new series actually, The Soul of Seabreeze Cove, trying to capture the essence of it, the people, the light, the traditions." He nodded, his gaze sweeping over the waves. "It's a deep place, Seabreeze. Old souls here, and the sea, she holds a lot of stories." He picked up another piece of wood, his fingers tracing its grain. "You'll find them, if you listen hard enough." "I hope so," Clara said, returning the carved bird. Her gaze lingered on him, on the quiet strength in his hands, the thoughtful expression on his face as he looked at the ocean. There was more to Finn O'Connell than the gruff boat builder she'd first seen. Much more. And for some reason, she felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to learn every single one of his stories. The last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. The lighthouse beam swept across the darkening waters, a steady, comforting pulse. Clara stood there watching Finn, watching the sea, and a new whisper began to form in her heart, one she hadn't dared to speak, not even to the ancient willow. A whisper of possibility, of connection, of a quiet yearning that had found its unexpected home in Seabreeze Cove. Clara turned, a gentle smile playing on her lips, her gaze meeting Finn's. His eyes, the color of the deep ocean just before dawn, held a question she couldn't quite decipher, a flicker of something that mirrored her own burgeoning feeling. The air, crisp with the scent of salt and pine, seemed to hum with an unspoken energy between them. "It's beautiful tonight," she murmured, her voice a little softer than usual. Finn nodded, his silhouette outlined against the last vestiges of twilight. "It always is out here. There's a quiet magic to the changing of the guard from day to night." He gestured towards the sea, where the lighthouse beam continued its rhythmic sweep. "It's a good time for stories, too, when the world settles down." Clara's heart gave a little lurch. He remembered. "I'd like that very much, Finn," she said, her smile widening. "To hear your stories." He chuckled, a low, comforting sound that resonated in the gathering dusk. "Well, Clara, from the big city, it's a long collection. You might need more than one evening." "I have time," she replied, the words carrying more truth than she'd intended. She and Dang have time. Time she wanted to spend right here, with him. They walked back towards the cottages, the path illuminated by the beam of the lighthouse, and the first shy stars appearing in the sky. The silence between them was no longer awkward but comfortable, laced with an anticipation that felt warm and promising. At the gate of her cottage, Clara paused. "Thank you, Finn," she said, looking up at him. "For the walk, and for sharing your cove." He leaned against the gate post, a familiar, easy pose. "My pleasure, Clara, and I'm glad you're here." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than strictly necessary, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "Good night, Finn." "Good night, Clara. Dream well." She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the shadows, before stepping inside her cottage. The small space, usually a sanctuary of calm, now felt charged with the lingering presence of their conversation. She made herself a cup of herbal tea, but her mind was still out by the sea, replaying every word, every glance. The whisper in her heart had grown louder, a gentle melody now. It wasn't just about the quiet or the escape from the city anymore. It was about Seabreeze Cove, yes, but more specifically, it was about the man who lived by the lighthouse, whose eyes held the depth of the ocean, and whose smile held a warmth that was slowly thawing a part of her she hadn't realized was frozen. The next morning, Clara woke with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The sun streamed through her window, painting bright squares on the wooden floor. She dressed quickly, a new energy buzzing within her, and headed straight for the bakery. Mrs. Gable was already bustling about, humming a cheerful tune. "Morning, Clara? You're up early," Mrs. Gable said, sliding a freshly baked cinnamon roll onto a plate. "Something tells me Seabreeze Cove is agreeing with you." Clara smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. "It really is, Mrs. Gable. It's exactly what I needed." She bought a few extra pastries, a bag of her favorite coffee beans, and then, on a sudden impulse, a small, vibrant potted fuchsia. "For the cottage," she explained, though her mind was already envisioning it on Finn's lighthouse porch. She quickly dismissed the thought as too forward, a blush rising to her cheeks. Still, the fuchsia found a spot on her own window sill, its cheerful blooms a testament to her brightening mood. Later that morning, as she walked towards the cliffs, sketchbook in hand, she saw him. Finn was mending a fishing net outside his cottage, his movements practiced and rhythmic. He looked up as she approached, his hands pausing in their work. "Morning, Clara," he greeted, his voice carrying easily on the breeze. "Morning, Finn," she replied, feeling a flutter in her chest. "Hard at work?" He gestured to the net. "Just a little repair. Old Man Hemlock's net caught on something stubborn." He wiped his hands on a cloth. "Where are you off to?" "Just for a walk, maybe do some sketching," she said, holding up her sketchbook. The light is particularly lovely today. It is, he agreed, his gaze sweeping across the cove. You know, there's a spot just beyond the old boathouse, if you follow the path, that has a view of the entire bay. Perfect for sketching. And it's often quiet there. Oh, really? Her eyes lit up. I haven't found that one yet. I could show you if you like, he offered, a casualness in his tone that belied the sudden warmth in her chest. I was just about to head that way anyway, to check the mooring lines. I'd love that, she said, perhaps a little too eagerly. They walked together, the gentle sound of waves accompanying their footsteps. Finn pointed out different seabirds, identified wildflowers growing in the crevices of the rocks, and shared snippets of local history, tales of shipwrecks and brave rescues, of hidden coves and ancient fishing traditions. Clara listened, captivated, her heart expanding with each new detail. His voice was a soothing balm, his knowledge of the sea and land absolute. When they reached the spot, it was exactly as he described, a breathtaking panorama of the turquoise bay, framed by rugged cliffs and dotted with the distant sails of fishing boats. Clara gasped, immediately pulling out her sketchbook. It's incredible, Finn. Thank you. He simply smiled, leaning against a sun-warmed rock, watching her as she began to draw. She felt his gaze not intrusive but comforting, like a warm blanket on a cool evening. After a while, he began to speak again, his voice low and melodic, telling her the story of the first lighthouse keeper of Seabreeze Cove, a man named Silas, whose love for the sea was so profound he swore his spirit would never leave its shores. They say, Finn concluded, his eyes twinkling, that on the stormiest nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear Silas humming an old sea shanty, guiding the boats home. Clara looked up from her sketch, her pencil still poised. Do you believe it? Finn shrugged, a thoughtful expression on his face. I believe in the power of stories, Clara. And the power of love. Silas loved this place, loved his duty, and that kind of love leaves an echo, doesn't it? His words hung in the air, resonating deeply within her. She thought of her own life, of the sterile city apartment she'd fled, of the ambition that had once consumed her, leaving her hollow. She thought of the quiet yearning she'd discovered here, and the unexpected home it had found. I think it does, she said softly, meeting his gaze. I think it absolutely does. They spent the rest of the afternoon there, Finn sharing more tales of the cove, Clara sketching, occasionally asking questions that deepened his narrative. She learned about the treacherous currents of the Whispering Channel, the hidden cave rumored to hold pirate treasure, and the legendary Moonstone Beach, where, once a year, the sand glowed with an ethereal light under the full moon. Each story was a thread, weaving them closer together, painting a vibrant picture of a life lived in harmony with the sea. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the cliffs, Finn stood up. I should head back. The light will be fading soon, and I have a few things to check before dinner. Clara closed her sketchbook, a pleasant weariness settling over her. Thank you for today, Finn. It was wonderful. My pleasure, Clara, he said, his smile warm. Perhaps tomorrow, if you're not too busy, I could show you the old tide pools. They're teeming with life after the morning low tide. I'd love that, she replied, her heart doing a happy little skip. See you tomorrow then. Their days began to fall into a comforting rhythm. Mornings often found Clara at the bakery, then a walk, sometimes alone, sometimes with Finn. Afternoons were spent sketching, reading, or simply watching the waves, always with the underlying hope of seeing Finn. And more often than not, she did. He'd stop by her cottage with a freshly caught fish, or a basket of wild berries he'd found on his walks. She, in turn, would bring him warm pastries from Mrs. Gable's or a cup of her special coffee. They'd share quiet meals on his porch, the lighthouse beam sweeping over them, or sit on her small patio, listening to the crickets and the distant murmur of the sea. One particularly stormy evening, a sudden squall rolled in, bringing with it a fierce wind and driving rain. Clara tucked safely in her cottage, watched the trees bend and sway, and the waves crash against the shore with a ferocity she hadn't witnessed before. Her thoughts immediately went to Finn alone in the lighthouse. A few minutes later, there was a knock on her door. It was Finn, a thick oilskin slicker gleaming with rain, his hair plastered to his forehead. In his hand, he held a steaming mug. Thought you might appreciate some hot chocolate, he said, his voice a little louder than usual over the wind. And a bit of company if you're not busy. Storms can be a bit boisterous for those not used to them. Clara's heart swelled. Finn, come in, you're soaked. She ushered him inside, taking the mug. Its warmth spread through her hands. Thank you, it's perfect. He shed his slicker, shaking off the water, and sat by her small fireplace, where she'd lit a fire earlier. The crackling flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate glow. This is cozy, he remarked, looking around. You've made it very much your own. I try, she said, settling into the armchair opposite him. It's small, but it feels like home. She paused, then asked, Are you all right? Is the lighthouse okay? He smiled reassuringly. The lighthouse has seen far worse than this, Clara. It's built to withstand anything the ocean throws at it, and I'm perfectly fine. Just thought a friendly face might be a welcome sight. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the storm rage outside, the rhythmic beat of the rain on the roof, the roar of the waves. Clara sipped her hot chocolate, feeling a profound sense of peace and security she hadn't known she was missing. With Finn there, the storm felt less threatening, more like a grand display of nature's power, witnessed from a safe haven. Tell me another story, Finn, she prompted, her voice soft. He looked at her, his eyes warm in the firelight. Which one? I have tales of mermaids and sea monsters, of brave captains and lost ships, of the very first star that fell into the ocean and became a pearl. Tell me about the star, she requested, leaning forward, utterly enchanted. Finn began, his voice a gentle drone against the storm's fury, weaving a tale of cosmic longing and oceanic magic. He described a star, lonely in the vast darkness, falling from the sky to find companionship in the deep, transforming into a luminous pearl that granted wishes to those with pure hearts. Clara listened, her gaze fixed on his face, mesmerized not just by the story, but by the storyteller himself. The way his eyes sparkled as he spoke, the subtle gestures of his hands, the passion in his voice. When he finished, the storm outside seemed to have softened its roar, as if listening intently to his words. That was beautiful, Finn, she whispered. Do you believe in wishes? He looked into the flames. I believe in hope, Clara, and a wish is just hope. He turned his gaze to her. Do you have any wishes, Clara? She thought for a moment. Her initial wish, to escape the city, had been granted. But now, a new, more profound wish was forming. A wish to stay, to truly belong, to see where this unexpected connection might lead. She didn't voice it, not yet, but a faint blush touched her cheeks. Maybe, she said, her voice barely audible. He seemed to understand, a gentle smile playing on his lips. They talked for hours that night, sharing pieces of their lives, not just stories of the cove, but stories of themselves. Clara found herself opening up about the pressures of her old job, the loneliness of her busy city life, the burnout that had led her to Seabreeze Cove. Finn listened patiently, his gaze empathetic, offering quiet wisdom and understanding. He, in turn, spoke of his own path to the lighthouse, not as an escape, but as a calling. He'd grown up in Seabreeze Cove, left for a few years to study marine biology, but the pull of the sea and the lighthouse had always been too strong. It's in my blood, I suppose, he'd said, a fond smile on his face. My grandfather was a keeper, and his father before him. It's a quiet life, but a deeply fulfilling one. You're connected to something ancient, something constant. As the storm finally began to subside, leaving behind a refreshed, clean world, Finn rose to leave. I should get back to the lighthouse, check on things. Thank you for staying, Finn, Clara said, walking him to the door. It meant a lot. He paused on her doorstep, the newly calm air cool against their faces. It meant a lot to me too, Clara. Thank you for the company. His gaze lingered, then he reached out, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. Good night. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sent a warmth through her that radiated from her skin to her very core. She watched him walk away, the lingering scent of sea and rain, and something uniquely Finn clinging to the air around her. She closed the door, her hand instinctively going to her cheek, where his touch still seemed to tingle. The quiet yearning was no longer a whisper. It was a clear, resonant song in her heart. The days that followed were filled with a comfortable intimacy that settled between them like the morning fog over the cove, soft and encompassing. They explored hidden beaches, collected smooth sea glass, and shared laughter over cups of tea. Clara found herself sketching Finn as often as she did the landscape, his profile against the sunset, his hands deftly mending a net, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She showed him some of her sketches, and he was genuinely impressed, especially with the ones of the lighthouse and the sea. "You capture the soul of it, Clara," he'd said, tracing a line on her drawing of the lighthouse. "Not just what it looks like, but what it feels like." Her cheeks had flushed with pleasure. His praise meant more to her than any accolades she'd received in her old life. One sunny afternoon, Finn arrived at her cottage with a small weathered wooden box. "I have something to show you," he said, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Something special." He led her to his lighthouse, up the winding stairs, past the polished brass and the smell of old oil and sea salt, all the way to the very top, the lantern room. From there, the view was breathtaking, stretching endlessly across the ocean and the rugged coastline. "This is incredible, Finn," Clara breathed, gazing out at the vast expanse. He smiled, then carefully opened the wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, were several old, intricately carved pieces of wood, smooth with age, and a collection of polished stones. "These are my family's story stones," he explained, his voice low with reverence. "Each one represents a significant event, a memory, a legacy passed down through generations of lighthouse keepers." He picked up a smooth, dark stone, etched with the image of a sailing ship. "This one, my great-great-grandfather, the first keeper, saved a ship during a terrible gale. He carried a beacon to the highest point of the cliff before the lighthouse was built, guiding them to safety." He picked up another, a lighter stone with a carved whale. "My grandmother, a fierce and gentle woman, once befriended a pod of whales that would visit the cove every year. She'd sing to them from the shore." Clara listened, utterly captivated, as Finn shared the stories behind each stone, weaving a tapestry of his family's history, their connection to Seabreeze Cove, and their unwavering dedication to the lighthouse. It was more than just history. It was a glimpse into the very heart of who Finn was, a testament to his roots and his deep sense of purpose. When he finished, a comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the cry of gulls and the distant sigh of the waves. Clara reached out, gently touching a stone carved with a tiny lighthouse. "These are truly precious, Finn. Thank you for sharing them with me." He closed the box, his gaze soft as he looked at her. "You're the first person I've shown them to outside my immediate family. I wanted you to understand." "Understand what?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. He took a step closer, his hand reaching out to touch hers, his fingers warm and firm against her skin. "Understand why this place means so much to me, why I'm so rooted here, and to understand a part of me that I don't often share." His thumb gently stroked the back of her hand. "I feel like, with you, Clara, it's different. I feel seen." Clara's heart pounded, a joyous drumbeat in her chest. His words, honest and vulnerable, resonated with a profound truth she recognized in herself. She felt seen by him too, truly seen, not just for her capabilities or her past, but for the quiet, yearning woman she was becoming in Seabreeze Cove. "I feel that too, Finn," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "More than I ever have before." His gaze deepened, full of an unspoken emotion that mirrored her own. He leaned in, slowly, his eyes searching hers, asking permission. Clara closed her eyes, a soft sigh escaping her lips, and tilted her head slightly. His lips met hers, a gentle, tender kiss that was soft and sweet, carrying the taste of salt and sunshine. It was a kiss that spoke of quiet understanding, of burgeoning affection, of the promise of something truly beautiful. It was not a kiss of fiery passion, but one of deep, comforting warmth, like coming home after a long journey. When they finally broke apart, Clara's eyes fluttered open. Finn was looking at her, a profound tenderness in his gaze, a shy smile gracing his lips. "I think," he murmured, his voice a little husky, That might be a story stone in itself, Clara. She laughed softly, a genuine, joyful sound. I think you might be right, Finn. Her hand was still in his, their fingers intertwined, a silent testament to the connection that had bloomed between them. The lighthouse beam swept around, illuminating their faces, two souls finding their compass points in each other. They stayed in the lantern room for a while longer, just holding hands, talking in hushed tones, the world outside feeling distant and irrelevant. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in glorious hues of orange and pink, a familiar spectacle that now felt imbued with new meaning. As evening approached, they descended the winding stairs, their steps lighter, their hearts full. Finn walked her back to her cottage, the air now cool and fragrant, with night-blooming jasmine. At her door he paused, his gaze still holding that tender warmth. I have to check on the lamp now, he said, his voice a gentle murmur. But, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? I could make my famous fish pie. I would love that, Finn, she replied, her smile radiant. More than anything. He squeezed her hand. Good night, Clara. Good night, Finn. She watched him walk away, the familiar silhouette against the darkening sky. But this time, her heart sang with a new kind of joy, a quiet certainty. She knew, with a clarity that settled deep in her bones, that Seabreeze Cove was no longer just a temporary escape. It was becoming her home, not just because of its peace and beauty, but because of the man who tended its light, who shared his stories and his heart, and who had shown her a possibility she hadn't dared to dream of. The quiet yearning had found its voice, and it spoke of a future woven with shared stories, tender touches, and the unwavering light of the lighthouse. The quiet yearning had found its voice, and it spoke of a future woven with shared stories, tender touches, and the unwavering light of the lighthouse. Ella let the words settle, a warm hum in her chest. The air in Liam's cozy cottage, filled with the scent of sea salt and old books, seemed to hold her breath, a silent witness to this profound shift within her. She looked at Liam, who was now meticulously wiping down the last of the dinner plates, his profile silhouetted against the soft glow of the kitchen light. There was a quiet strength in his movements, a dedication to the small tasks of life that mirrored his dedication to the lighthouse, and now, perhaps, to something more. He turned, catching her gaze, and a gentle smile softened the lines around his eyes. Lost in thought? He asked, his voice a low rumble that always felt like a comforting embrace. Ella felt a blush creep up her neck, a sweet embarrassment at being so transparent. Just thinking about everything, she admitted, gesturing vaguely around the room, then towards the window where the lighthouse beam swept across the darkening sky. About Seabreeze Cove, and Liam's smile deepened, a warmth entering his eyes that made her heart give a little flutter. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms, his presence solid and grounding. And what are those thoughts telling you, Ella? She took a breath, feeling a delightful tremor of anticipation. They're me? That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The words came out softer than she intended, but carried a weight of truth that resonated deeply. He simply nodded, his gaze unwavering, understanding in their depths. He didn't press, didn't demand more, just accepted her revelation with the same quiet certainty with which she had spoken it. That was Liam, always. His acceptance was a balm, allowing her feelings to unfurl naturally, without pressure. The next morning, the sun rose in a blaze of soft oranges and pinks, painting the sky over Seabreeze Cove with strokes of pure magic. Ella woke early, the lingering warmth of her realization from the night before a comforting blanket. She found Liam in the kitchen, already brewing coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the salty air drifting in through the open window. Morning, he said, turning with 2 mugs, one in each hand. Slept well. Like a dream, she replied, a genuine smile curving her lip. She took the mug he offered, her fingers brushing his, and a familiar spark, soft yet undeniable, passed between them. They walked out onto the small porch, settling into the worn Adirondack chairs that faced the ocean. The rhythmic crash of waves against the shore was the only sound, a soothing soundtrack to their quiet communion. Ella sipped her coffee, its warmth spreading through her. She watched the gulls wheeling overhead, their cries carried on the breeze. Everything felt sharper, more vibrant, as if her decision had opened her eyes to a new layer of beauty in the world. She thought about her apartment in the city, the demanding job, the endless stream of deadlines and expectations. It all felt so distant now, a life she had outgrown without even realizing it. "I need to make some calls today," she said, breaking the silence. "About extending my leave, or maybe more than extending." Liam turned his head, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Taking the plunge, then?" She laughed, a light, joyful sound. "It feels less like plunging and more like floating home." She met his gaze, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them, the vast ocean and endless sky their witnesses. "I don't want to leave, Liam." His eyes softened, mirroring the emotion that swelled in her chest. "I don't want you to either, Ella." His voice was low, earnest, and it was everything she needed to hear. Over the next few days, Ella began the practical steps of untangling her city life. Phone calls to her understanding, if slightly bewildered, boss resulted in an agreement for a longer sabbatical. She gave notice on her apartment, a bittersweet but ultimately liberating act. Each decision, each conversation, felt like a brick being laid in the foundation of her new life in Seabreeze Cove. Liam, ever observant, offered silent support. He'd listen patiently while she recounted her conversations, offering a steady presence and a comforting cup of tea. He never pressured her, never hurried her, simply allowed her the space to navigate these changes at her own pace. This gentle understanding was one of the things she cherished most about him. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings often started with coffee on the porch, watching the sun climb higher, followed by a walk along the beach, collecting shells or simply enjoying the salty air. Afternoons might find them tending to Liam's small garden, where Ella discovered a surprising knack for coaxing stubborn herbs to life, or working on a small repair project around the cottage or lighthouse. She even helped him polish the massive Fresnel lens, feeling a profound connection to the history and purpose of the light. One afternoon, as they were meticulously polishing the brass railings in the lighthouse, Ella paused, wiping a smudge from her brow. "You know," she said, looking up at the intricate mechanism, "I never thought I'd find myself doing this, polishing a lighthouse." Liam chuckled, his rag still moving in steady circles. "It's not everyone's idea of excitement, I suppose." "No, it's not," she agreed, "but it's fulfilling. Like I'm part of something bigger, something that truly matters." She looked at him, her gaze earnest. "Like I'm finally finding my own light here with yours." He stopped polishing, his hand resting on the cool brass. He turned to her, his blue eyes deep and searching. "You always had your own light, Ella. I just think maybe you needed a place where it could shine without being overshadowed." He reached out, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his touch light and tender. The air crackled between them, thick with unspoken feelings, with the weight of promises yet to be made. Later that week, a small crisis arose in the cove. The old fishing boat belonging to Silas, one of the oldest fishermen in town, had sprung a leak. It wasn't a major emergency, but Silas was too frail to fix it himself, and his son was away. Liam, being the unofficial handyman of the cove, was immediately called upon. "Looks like we've got a project," Liam said to Ella that morning, explaining the situation over breakfast. "Silas is a good man, helped me out plenty when I first got here." "Can I help?" Ella asked, surprising herself. A few weeks ago, she would have balked at the idea of patching a fishing boat. Now, the thought of helping felt natural, even appealing. Liam's eyes lit up. "You're serious? It'll be mucky work." "I'm serious," she confirmed. "I'm learning, remember, and I want to be useful." So, armed with overalls and a can-do attitude, Ella joined Liam at the small dock. The boat, the Salty Siren, listed slightly, its wooden hull looking a little forlorn. Liam expertly assessed the damage, explaining each step to Ella as he went. He showed her how to mix the epoxy, how to apply it, how to sand down the rough patches. Ella, to her own astonishment, found herself enjoying the physical labor, the satisfaction of seeing a problem slowly, steadily, being solved. They worked side by side for hours, the scent of salt and resin filling the air. There was a comfortable silence between them, punctuated by Liam's calm instructions and Ella's occasional questions. At one point, as she was painstakingly smoothing a patch, Liam's hand came over hers, guiding her movement. His touch sent a shiver through her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun beating down on them. She looked up, and he was smiling, a genuine, easy smile that reached his eyes. "You're a quick study," he complimented, his voice soft. "Only because I have a good teacher," she replied, her voice a little breathless. By late afternoon, the leak was mended, the patch solid and secure. Silas, a wizened man with eyes the color of the sea, came down to inspect their work. "Looks good, Liam," he grumbled, but his eyes twinkled with gratitude. He clapped Liam on the shoulder, then turned to Ella. "And you, young lady, never thought I'd see a city girl with an epoxy brush in her hand. You're all right, you are." Ella beamed, feeling a surge of pride and belonging. It was a small compliment, but it felt monumental. As they walked back to the cottage, their clothes smudged with boat grime, a sense of quiet contentment settled over her. This was it. This was her life now, messy and real and filled with purpose. That evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the lighthouse beam sweep across the water, Ella leaned her head on Liam's shoulder. His arm came around her naturally, pulling her closer. The warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her ear, filled her with a profound sense of peace. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice soft. "For what?" he asked, his chin resting gently on her hair. "For everything. For showing me this place. For letting me stay. For letting me help. For being you." He tightened his embrace, a silent affirmation. "It's good to have you here, Ella. More than good." The next few weeks passed in a blur of small, meaningful moments. Ella found herself actively seeking ways to contribute to the community. She volunteered at the small local library, organizing shelves and helping children with their reading. She joined the informal Seabreeze Cove Welcome Committee, a group of local women who organized potlucks and helped newcomers settle in, though she now felt more like a long-term resident than a newcomer herself. Her days were full but not rushed, purposeful but not stressful. One blustery afternoon, a letter arrived for Ella. It was from her old firm, a formal offer to return to her position, with a significant promotion and a substantial raise. She stared at the crisp, white envelope. The familiar corporate logo, a stark contrast to the rustic charm of Liam's kitchen table. She felt no pull, no temptation. The life it represented felt distant, almost alien. Liam, sensing her quiet contemplation, looked up from his book. "Everything all right?" She slid the letter across the table to him. He read it, his brow furrowing slightly, then looked back at her, a question in his eyes. "It's a good offer," she said, almost to herself. "Everything I thought I wanted just a few months ago." She picked up a smooth gray pebble she'd found on the beach, turning it over and over in her fingers. "But it feels empty now, like a beautiful box with nothing inside." She met his gaze, her own eyes clear and resolute. "I don't want it, Liam. I want this. I want Seabreeze Cove. I want us." The words hung in the air, a declaration, a vulnerable offering. Liam's eyes softened, a profound tenderness replacing his initial concern. He reached across the table, taking her hand, his fingers strong and warm around hers. "And I want you, Ella, more than I ever thought possible." He didn't say it with grand theatrics, but with a quiet conviction that resonated deep within her soul. It was a promise, unspoken but understood, that their shared future was not just a dream, but a tangible path they were walking together. Their relationship deepened, a quiet blossoming that felt as natural and inevitable as the changing tides. They shared more than just meals and chores. They shared dreams, fears, and the comfortable silences that only true intimacy allows. They talked about their pasts, Ella recounting her ambitious climb up the corporate ladder, the loneliness that often accompanied her success, and Liam sharing stories of his nomadic youth before he found his anchor in the lighthouse, a quiet life that suited his introspective nature. One evening, they drove to the highest point overlooking the cove, a secluded spot Liam knew, where the stars seemed to spill across the sky in a dazzling display. They sat on a weathered bench, wrapped in a thick blanket, the cool night air refreshing against their faces. "It's magnificent," Ella whispered, gazing up at the Milky Way, a shimmering river of light. "It always puts things in perspective," Liam replied, his arm drawing her closer. Makes you feel small, but in a good way. Like you're part of something vast and beautiful. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. I used to feel small in a bad way in the city. Like I was just a cog in a giant machine, easily replaceable. She sighed contentedly. Here, I feel small, but significant. Like my presence, however tiny, adds to the beauty. She paused, then added, like my presence adds to your beauty, Liam Dottie. He turned his head, his lips brushing her hair. You've added so much, Ella. Color, laughter, light. He shifted slightly, turning more fully towards her. His hand gently cupped her cheek, his thumb stroking softly. His eyes, usually so calm, held a new intensity, a depth of emotion that made her heart pound a little faster. I love you, Ella, he said, his voice a low murmur, barely above a whisper, but it echoed through her entire being. Tears pricked at her eyes, tears of pure joy and profound relief. This was it. The words she hadn't dared to hope for, spoken with such earnest sincerity. I love you too, Liam, she responded, her voice thick with emotion. She leaned in, her lips finding his in a soft, tender kiss that spoke volumes of their shared journey, of the quiet certainty that had grown between them, of the future stretching out before them, bright and full of promise, like the starlit sky above. The kiss deepened, a gentle exploration, a silent conversation of souls finally finding their true home in one another. It wasn't a whirlwind, passionate embrace, but a steady, comforting melding, full of unspoken promises and the deep, abiding affection that had bloomed so beautifully between them. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and content, their foreheads rested against each other, their eyes closed, savoring the moment. Stay with me, Ella, Liam whispered, his voice husky, his breath warm against her cheek. Not just for a sabbatical, stay here, with me, for good. It wasn't a question, but an invitation, a plea, born of deep love and longing. Ella pulled back slightly, her gaze searching his, finding only sincerity and boundless affection. A wave of warmth washed over her, a feeling of coming home that transcended the physical location. Yes, she breathed, her voice barely audible. Oh yes, Liam, 1,000 times yes. A slow, radiant smile spread across Liam's face, transforming his features, making his eyes sparkle like the stars above. He kissed her again, this time with a joyful certainty that mirrored her own. The following weeks were filled with a delightful blend of practical planning and romantic discovery. Ella officially resigned from her city job, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders she hadn't even realized she was carrying. She started looking for ways to use her skills in Seabreeze Cove. The small town needed a website to promote its local businesses and tourism, a project she eagerly took on, finding immense satisfaction in contributing to the community in a tangible way. She also began volunteering more formally at the local school, helping with their after-school literacy program, her patience and gentle demeanor making her an instant favorite with the children. Her old apartment was rented out, and her belongings from the city were either packed away for storage or carefully selected and brought to Liam's cottage, slowly integrating her life into his. A new bookshelf appeared in the living room to accommodate her extensive collection of novels, and her vibrant artworks began to dot the walls, adding splashes of color to the cozy space. Liam watched these changes with quiet pleasure, enjoying the way her presence was transforming his home, making it feel even more alive. They spent an afternoon clearing out an unused room in the cottage, dust motes dancing in the sunlight as they worked. What are we going to do with this space? Ella asked, wiping sweat from her brow, a streak of dust on her cheek. Liam looked around, a thoughtful expression on his face. Well, it could be a study for you, a place for your writing or for your new web design projects. He paused, then his eyes twinkled. Or he added, a playful glint in their depths. It could be a guest room, for when your family visits, or if we ever need a little extra space for ourselves. He left the implication hanging in the air, a gentle hint at a future that extended beyond just the two of them. Ella's heart skipped a beat. She knew exactly what he meant. A family. Children. The idea, once so far removed from her carefully planned life, now felt like the most natural, most beautiful possibility in the world. She smiled, a soft, hopeful smile. I think a study, for now, sounds perfect. But her gaze lingered on the empty room, imagining a crib in the corner, tiny clothes hanging in a miniature wardrobe. Their love story wasn't one of grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but of quiet moments, shared laughter, and unwavering support. It was in the way Liam would warm her mug of tea without being asked, or how Ella would leave him little notes by his coffee maker before he left for his lighthouse duties. It was in the comfortable silences they shared, in the way they anticipated each other's needs, in the deep, abiding trust that had taken root between them. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned vibrant shades of red and gold around Seabreeze Cove, they found themselves at the annual town harvest festival. The air was filled with the scent of spiced cider, roasted corn, and wood smoke. Children laughed as they chased each other through piles of fallen leaves, and local musicians played lively folk tunes on a makeshift stage. Liam, usually reserved in crowds, seemed to relax, his hand finding Ella's and holding it securely as they strolled through the bustling stalls. He introduced her to more townspeople, proudly calling her my Ella, a possessive yet tender phrase that always made her heart swell. She felt truly accepted, a part of the fabric of this small, vibrant community. They stopped at a fortune-teller's booth, a whimsical tent adorned with fairy lights and draped fabrics. Just for fun, Ella urged, pulling Liam inside. The fortune-teller, a kindly woman with knowing eyes and a cascade of silver hair, took Ella's hand first. She gazed into her palm, a soft smile playing on her lips. I see a journey, dear one, a long journey, but you've found your destination, a steady light, a safe harbor. She looked up, her eyes twinkling. And a future filled with warmth, laughter, and many, many shared sunrises. Then she took Liam's hand, her smile widening. And for you, lighthouse keeper, the light you tend will shine brighter than ever, for you have found your guiding star, one who will illuminate your path and fill your quiet world with music. She paused, then added, and I see a strong foundation, built on trust and a love that deepens with every passing season. As they emerged from the tent, hand in hand, a comfortable silence settled between them. Ella leaned her head on Liam's shoulder. Shared sunrises, she mused softly. I like the sound of that. Liam squeezed her hand. Me too, Ella. Me too. He stopped by a stall selling handmade wooden ornaments and picked up a small, intricately carved lighthouse. A symbol, he said, handing it to her. Of everything we've found. She held the lighthouse, its smooth wood warm in her palm. It was perfect. A symbol of their story, of the light they tended together, of the home they were building, one quiet, loving moment at a time. The festival lights twinkled around them, casting long dancing shadows, and the music played on, a sweet melody of a life beautifully unfolding. The future, with all its unknowns, felt not daunting, but wonderfully inviting, a vast expanse of shared moments waiting to be lived under the unwavering gaze of the lighthouse. Liam's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with a familiar warmth that sent a shiver of contentment through her. Ready to head back to our own beacon, Clara, he murmured, his voice a soft, steady rhythm that always settled her heart. She nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder for a moment. The small wooden lighthouse still clutched gently in her other hand. The festival's cheerful din began to fade behind them as they walked, not in a hurry, but savoring the quiet companionship that felt as natural as breathing. The path home was dappled with moonlight filtering through ancient oaks, and above them, the true lighthouse beam swept across the sky, a comforting, rhythmic pulse. It was their nightly lullaby, a constant reminder of the safety and solace they had built together. As they neared their cottage nestled on the cliffside, its windows glowed with a soft, inviting light, a reflection of the warmth within. Inside, the air was sweet with the scent of chamomile tea and the lingering aroma of the day's baking. Clara carefully placed the wooden lighthouse on the mantelpiece, beside a collection of smooth sea glass and a faded photograph of their first summer by the sea. Liam stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. A new addition to our collection of memories, he whispered, his lips brushing her temple. She leaned back into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the quiet beat of his heart against her back. It feels like a promise, she replied, tracing the miniature lighthouse with her fingertip. A promise of all the quiet mornings, the stormy nights, the ordinary days, made extraordinary simply because we're together. He turned her gently to face him, his eyes, the color of warm honey, reflecting the soft lamplight. "Every day with you is extraordinary, Clara," he said, his voice low and sincere. He ran a tender hand along her cheek, his touch sending a familiar warmth through her. "From the moment I saw you sketching by the old pier, I knew my world was about to get a whole lot brighter." A soft laugh escaped her lips, a sound of pure joy. "And I, when you offered me that terrible lopsided cup of tea, thought, this man might just be the one to keep me grounded." He chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "And I haven't I? Though I still insist my tea-making skills have improved dramatically." She smiled up at him, her heart overflowing. "They have, just like everything else, with you?" He lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a slow, tender kiss that spoke volumes of their shared history. It wasn't a kiss of fireworks, but of deep, abiding connection, of home. When they finally pulled apart, a comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock and the distant murmur of the waves. Hand in hand, they walked to the window, gazing out at the vast expanse of the dark ocean, illuminated by the steady sweep of the real lighthouse beam. It spun its light, unwavering, a steadfast guardian against the night. Just like their love, a constant, comforting presence, guiding them, protecting them, making every moment, every day, a precious gift. Clara rested her head on Liam's shoulder, his arm tightening around her, and together, they watched the light, their hearts full, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, knowing they would face it, as always, together.